right, welcome everyone to the webinar on design systems. Today we're going to give a preview of the full workshop that we're giving virtually on the 15th of November. And I'll introduce a little bit the concepts we'll go over, as well as who's on the call. Ray Velez is here. He is the mastermind behind design systems. He led a similar webinar and workshop in September. Went really well, so we thought we'd open it up to more people and make it virtual. He's currently the head of product at Be Global. He's also a founder. He has his own web design firm, does freelance web designs. He's participated in a lot of different hackathons. Yeah, we were talking earlier, interesting fact is like all three of the people who are going to talk today have won a hackathon with Lovable or with Bolt. You know, Ray's going to do most of the talking once I do my introduction and introduce our guest as well. So I'm Adam Berg. I'm the founder of We Build with AI. Started this organization about 6 months ago to help anyone build with these new AI tools. And I've done, I think AI coding workshop, we'll go through the numbers in the next slide, but AI coding workshops, lightning hackathons, I call them, where you have maybe 90 minutes to actually build something from scratch, as well as corporate and internal hackathons and trainings and consulting. So a little my background. So I think everyone on this call is also self-taught in terms of coding, which is pretty cool. It shows the power of these tools and what you can actually do with them. I don't have a coding background. Worked mainly in early stage startups, some big tech companies, consulting, currently an expert in residence at AI2 Incubator in Seattle. I also help run hackathons with AI Tinkerers. And you can see some of the kind of people who have come through the workshops that I've run, as well as some of the clients that have had internal trainings or consulting. So over the last 6 months, over 2,000 builders have come through the 30 plus events that I've held, mainly targeted at non-engineers, and mainly focused on new vibe coders or kind of people who are starting out. The upcoming events that we have in Seattle, so later today, we're doing our third City of Seattle hackathon, this one focused on customer service. We also, if you are in the Seattle area, have our first workshop with Replit to help you hack your company and solve pain points within your company. That'll be in Bellevue on the 13th. And then this webinar is a preview of the full workshop on the 15th. And so, if you are interested in hosting events, whether it's virtually or in person, or bringing this to your company, feel free to email events@webuildwithai.org. And also, we'll send out an event kind of post-webinar feedback survey for this to get your feedback. And if you fill it out within the next 24 hours or so, we'll put you in a drawing for either a $25 discount code for the full virtual workshop on the 15th. And early bird pricing for that runs through Friday, by the way. So it'd be another $25 off that. Or you can get a $25 Lovable discount code. So I'll be sending that out afterwards, but this is also the link that you can use. Awesome. So I want to introduce our guest. So Kat is actually a business school classmate of mine. She's currently the fractional head of growth, and she's the B2B app winner for the SheBuilds on Lovable hackathon that happened last month. And has a lot of different experience in startups, in growth and strategy, but relatively new to Vibe. And she actually took the first she did virtually, and she's going to talk a little bit about how that helped her win the hackathon. And once I saw that she joined this hackathon, I immediately reached out to her because I always enjoy connecting with people that I've worked with in the past. But then also one of the reasons why I started this organization is to help people kind of improve their vibe coding and learn different concepts as well. So, Kat, if you want to maybe say hi and talk a little bit about how you came up with AI Recess?
Sure. So hi, I'm Kat. It shows as Catherine. It sounds very formal, but I can't change my name on here for some reason. So love the slide. Adam, thank you for putting that together. But yeah, AI Recess, maybe I'll just give some background on the SheBuilds hackathon in general. I am a huge fan of Elena. So I joined the SheBuilds hackathon, which was hosted by Lovable. That was in early October. Actually, I think I applied, or it started like exactly a month ago, actually. And so prior to that, just for context, I had built a landing page at Lovable. So I really didn't have much experience, but I have the curiosity. And that's what I talk to a lot of people about, is that I've taken like a basic Python course, and I love technology and I love tinkering. So this hackathon was a great excuse to sort of focus for 2 days and build something, and be thoughtful about what I'm building. So the idea for AI Recess is, I like to call it the Duolingo for AI education, if you will. It's basically, it helps different people at businesses in different departments learn and play with platforms like Lovable, ChatGPT, Perplexity, through little bite-sized or snack-sized activities. And so that came about because, as Adam mentioned, I do a lot of consulting as a fractional head of growth. I've run a couple of businesses, so I've had to manage teams of up to 50 people in non-tech firms. So often these people are a little hesitant to adopt technology. And so I've sort of seen firsthand, like, the concept of, hey, let's learn something new and let's integrate it into our workflow doesn't work. Like, people have a million things to do. And so how can we figure out a way where we encourage this learning through the work that we have to do, right? So it's sort of a win-win for everyone. At least that's the theory. So that's where AI Recess came from.
Awesome. And so how did you kind of approach creating apps beforehand, so like the landing page and in Lovable, and just kind of conceptually, versus after you took the design systems workshop?
Yeah, so very different. So when I was applying for the Lovable SheBuilds hackathon, that's honestly my first time playing around with it. And I put my application, I wanted to build a landing page for my application as like a way to maybe stand out, because they were only going to choose 60 people. And so I fired up Lovable, and I like basically word vomited, I want to build a landing page and it's for an application and I can send you all the information, but here are the components and the sections of the landing page. And as a marketer, a salesperson, I've built landing pages before, so I kind of like got that piece. But from what it spit out, it was fine. It was functional and like really impressive for if you're new to Lovable, that wow, you can do this in literally 5 minutes. But the design was very generic. You can update all of that after the fact, but if I had really wanted to change how it looked, it would have taken a lot of time, I think. And so I'm very grateful. I posted on LinkedIn, I got into this hackathon, super excited. Adam luckily saw that post and he was like, hey, let me send you a few things that might be helpful. And I had, I'm on a million AI newsletters. And so I knew at a very basic level, to build a program, you're going to want a PRD, right? A product requirements document. So, okay, cool. Let me learn how to build a PRD. What are the components? How do you work with Claude or ChatGPT to do that? And then luckily Adam came in and was like, hey, here's a 50-minute video of a workshop we did around design systems. This could be really helpful as you think about what you want it to look like. So I played by the rules. I did not build anything until Monday, but I was sort of preparing of like, okay, what's a PRD? How do you build one? What the heck is a design system? And when I was listening to Ray was the one giving the presentation, like something clicked for me. I love branding and marketing, but I just I'm not trained in design. So I had no idea that there were like terms like neo-brutalism, liquid glass, like all these different terms to just that were like industry understood for the different components and what it would display as. So, you're asking like, how has it changed from beginning to the end? It's night and day, because I will not build without a design system.
After taking the workshop, what were some of the techniques you used? Like we'll cover some of them, right? Whether it's natural language or taking CSS or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like what were some of the things that you actually implemented from that workshop on the website?
So I would say like I'm at a very basic level, and that's one of the reasons I was telling Ray and Adam, I want to stay for this workshop because I want to learn sort of to be a little bit more advanced in my design system knowledge and usage. I did natural language. So the big game changer for me, which I think Ray might show today, is like just knowing some of the terms, right? So AI Recess uses neo-brutalism, which was really funny because I think that was like the first one that Ray mentioned in his presentation. And he was like,
and the one we'll show today. So
yeah, okay, cool. But I knew that I wanted this like, gamification concept. And so like the retro video game vibe was what I was going for. And I just didn't know there was a term for it. And so that was really helpful. I've gone down like a deep rabbit hole of like understanding like the design aesthetics and terms, so that when I'm working with clients now, if they're looking to build something, I like try to figure out, okay, what design system would pair with the look and feel of what they're trying to build so that we can prototype it. So I think the two biggest things is, one, kept it basic, like used natural language. I would love to learn how to like pull pieces of code and implement that, which I don't know if you go into today, but I know that's like a component of the workshop. And then just understanding some of the terms that you guys talk through in terms of, liquid glass, like what is that? And all the millions of other ones that we can think about.
Yeah. And so you can see a little bit of like the landing page for AI Recess on this slide, and kind of what that entails. Any other tips that you have for how you kind of executed those concepts from the workshop? So like as you're diving deeper, like there's some of the next learning.
Yeah, I think the other thing because I'm like really jazzed about this concept. I think it's so important. And when I'm talking to other people about it, they're like, why is this so cool? I'm continuing to build AI Recess out. So we just, as a little plug, we just launched a new feature with a prompt library, and you can save prompts and all that. It saved me so much time because we have a design system set up. And so all of the icons, all of the typography, like everything just works. And so like, that's the other thing I would say. It's not just, on the first prompt where you get a great design and you get the positive feedback, right? So if you launch something and it looks good, you're like, okay, let's keep going. But then it permeates, right? And it's all throughout the product. So that's been super, super helpful. And I know other people who have been building products in Lovable or similar platforms, like who haven't used a design system, and it's like you got to go fix this button, or this isn't aligning, like they've got to fix the code, and it's a bit more of a headache. So
yeah, I think it's a good point. It's kind of like a big unlock, and does a lot of the work for you. And I think that not only is a time saver, but it looks better, and then it also is a cleaner code base in the end as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, maybe last question before we kick it over to Ray. So there's another SheBuilds hackathon apparently coming up in December. Any advice for some of the people on the call who might want to join that one?
I think, first of all, apply. I literally almost didn't apply because, I've got a kid and I've got a job, and I was like, I don't have time for this, or like, I'm not going to get chosen. All the reasons why, like, push them out of your head and just do it. It's such an amazing community that Lovable is building around it. So there's that. From how do you prepare for the hackathon? I would say, like, you're here, this is great. Like take the workshop as, you know, step 2, like get smart about this. And then if you're new to it, like me, learn about a PRD, because I think those 2 things were the biggest game changers for me. With a little asterisk, I will say, Adam gave me this advice, and he said, okay, when you send your first prompt through to Lovable, if what you get back you don't like, just like open a new browser and do it again. Like don't try to beat your head against the wall, because maybe sometimes like just trying a second time is helpful. And on future projects, I found that to be very true. So
awesome. Well, it was great to kind of see you go through like learning all the concepts and then actually implementing them literally the next. I think that was pretty powerful. And thanks for sharing your experience, and like kind of, you know, hand it over to Ray, but feel free to add some commentary on as he goes through it, like what's worked for you.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you, Adam, for the intro. I'm Ray, and thank you, Kat, for the kind words. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to screen share. I do want to mention that in my case, I'm completely self-taught, and everything that we're going to be exploring today, it's crucial for anyone who's inquisitive and curious to try to implement this in a very hands-on manner. Like we're going to be covering some theory. I'll do some live examples, but at the end of the day, especially with all these AI tools, if you're curious enough, you'll see growth in a matter of days just by testing out these different tools that we're going to be sharing with you, these different approaches. So the first thing we want to define is, what is a design system? And a design system is, the best way to see this is breaking it down into 3 main verticals. Design systems, they all start with components, and components can be anything from buttons, a navigation bar, a grid, anything that visually makes up the skeleton of your landing page or dashboard or product. And components are pretty much going to go off of your design tokens. So design tokens is another way of, for example, for those of you that are more CSS or HTML, knowledgeable, design tokens are based on CSS or styling, right? So for example, if I have a button, my design tokens will define what is the border radius of this button. Is it a sharp looking button? Does it have rounded corners? What is the background color of this button? What is the text color of this button? So design tokens, the way I like to see design tokens is part of like the DNA. Like once you have design tokens defined, it'll tell the rest of your design system what's going to be the behavior and the styling of all these components. And then the third vertical for design systems is your theme. So when you're defining a theme, it's pretty much a cohesive styling rule. So for example, if my design system is based on a dark theme, then my theme itself will tell my design system that we have to use, for example, white text for it to be readable in backgrounds, right? So, design systems, you can break it down into these 3 verticals. And the best way I like to describe it, like I said earlier, is your visual DNA. It's the shared language that scales from single component to entire applications. Now, why do AI builders, why do they do so well with design systems? Well, number one, for those of you who have been using, and this is applicable to Lovable, Bolt, V0, Claude, all these AI builders by default, they will use ShadCN, which is another way of, it's a vanilla React UI library. And that is why whenever you're prompting with Lovable and you tell like, okay, create a landing page or create a CRM dashboard or anything that you're telling it, it's always going to look very similar. There may be some differences in color themes and gradients, but overall, you're usually going to see that it's using a very similar font, similar backgrounds, similar border radius, and it's all because they all come with ShadCN by default. And going back to kind of like my background, I'm used to having full freedom with the tools that I was using in the past. When we're talking about tools like WordPress or Webflow or Framer or even hand coding things yourself, you have a lot of flexibility on how you define the style. But with AI builders, it's all in the box, right? And it's harder to stand out when, even if you have a product that is on a technical level very elevated or very competitive, at the end of the day, we all go off of visuals and what is the UI looking like, what is the interface, what are the graphics looking like. So that's where, in my eyes, design systems are truly something that once you master it, you can take AI builders and go in any direction that you want. Also, there is less time wasted on making design decisions because everything is predefined early on. Especially when you're using AI builders, every prompt that you make, you're going to be spending money on tokens, right? So with a clearly defined design system, you can get that out of the way early on, and then you can solely focus on, authentication, integrating your database, fetching from APIs, or whatever functionality you're working on. You don't have to overthink design so much. And just to give you a comparison, an AI builder without design system, like I mentioned, will default to ShadCN. Your app looks like every other AI generated project out there, and it's harder to stand out from investors, users, or customers. With a design system, you have everything nicely aligned with your brand guidelines. You only have to update things once, like the primary color, radius, typography, and it pretty much cascades across the entire system with one prompt. And you don't have to overthink design so much. There are 3 ways, and we're going to be covering these 3 ways of using design systems. One is with natural language, where you simply tell Lovable through prompting, like, okay, create a landing page using liquid glass, right? Which is the new design system that Apple recently shipped. And by defining that with the very first prompt, every single thing you do afterwards will be pretty much within those restrictions and that theme that you've already established early on. The other way that we're going to be defining design systems is by copy pasting CSS from different libraries. The library that I'll be referencing today is CodePen. And in this approach, we pretty much copy CSS and we paste it into the initial prompt that we'll be giving Lovable. And again, I'll be covering this example also during our webinar today. And then the third type of design system is when you use an NPM package, which I'll show you a website where you can get NPM packages from. You can also use GitHub. And NPM is something that you see a lot with more, high-tier enterprise-level companies like Shopify, Apple, Microsoft. They all have their design systems already established in NPM packages. So when their developers are working on new products or new projects, all they have to do is reference usually that NPM package initially, and that's what's going to define the rest of their project. What is the value of design systems? Well, number one, consistency across all elements. It creates a more cohesive user experience. Scalability, to me, it's huge because, for example, if me and Adam, if we're both collaborating on a project on Lovable and we want to work on different projects at the same time on different workspaces, I can share with him what my design system is, either through CSS or an NPM package, and we'll be completely aligned from a visual standpoint. It also accelerates development cycles. There's less decision fatigue. I'm sure I'm not the only one here who's been hours on end prompting with Lovable, trying to define, like, okay, is this the right look or is this not it? So this is a way to really speed things up. And, like my previous example, working with Adam, it really enhances collaboration. Across the board, you'll see consistency. Like, it'll feel like every page feels like it belongs to the same family. You identify early on colors, typography, spacing, and there's behavioral consistency across the board. So for example, if there are hover animations that we have on, let's say, different items or cards in our landing page, then that behavioral consistency will stay aligned throughout the project. And, who benefits from design systems? Anyone who's a designer, anyone who's a developer, and especially now in the age of like, all these AI tools are coming out almost weekly, feels like, you'll be able to use this design system regardless of what tool you are using. And now let's jump right into it. So the first example will be using natural language. So in this example, I'm going to tell Lovable, create a landing page using the neo-brutalism design system. Use this design system for all components, tokens, and theme. Do not use Shatson design system. And this is a 3-sentence prompt. I'm purposely keeping it very, very ambiguous with just a landing page. Of course, once you're doing this yourself, the more details you give it, like for example, I want this landing page to have a hero, an about, a contact form, but in this case, on purpose, I'm keeping it very, very vague. And we'll see how it goes. And for those of you that are not familiar with what neo-brutalism looks like, I'm going to pull this up as an example. So there are a lot of variants to what neo-brutalism looks like, but one great example is Gumroad. These guys, they've been around for a long time. And from the very beginning, something that jumped at me visually was this usage of like almost like comic book or cartoonish looking design system and layout that they have. Another website that I discovered recently that's also using neo-brutalism is this company called Brainfish, which I love their website. So now let's see how Lovable's doing over here. And one thing that's very important is when you're prompting through natural language, you really have to emphasize on the fact that you do not want Lovable to use Shatson. Otherwise, this is a hit or miss, but if you don't give it this final sentence, it tends to mix a little bit of the default Tailwind CSS that Lovable comes out of the box with. And also something important is telling Lovable to use this design system on all components, tokens, and theme.
Yeah, just to be clear, like it's not just Lovable. Like this works with pretty much any of the vibe coding platforms, and so all of use Shatson Tailwind CSS as like the default, just because I don't know, it's what the LLMs were trained on, right?
Yep. Okay, so now we heard the little. Okay. So now here you can see that, of course, this is very raw and could absolutely be polished a lot more. But from the get-go, we're seeing that it's not your typical Lovable looking website. If you were to go ahead and take a look at the code on the back end, for those that are more CSS native, and you go to index, you're going to see that pretty much the new design system has been defined. So if I start prompting even further and I tell this like, okay, so right now, we're missing a contact form. So add a contact form to the bottom of the home page above the footer. And at this point, I don't even have to reference neo-brutalism anymore. I don't have to tell it to not use ShatCN. It's just going to understand like, okay, I already have the design system that was defined on the very first prompt. So now when it's adding this new section, we'll see that it'll have the exact same style. And there you have it.
It's magical. I just want to chime in. There's a comment that was like, this is game changing. I'm like, yes.
And then here's another example of a project that I've been working on recently, also using the design systems. This one did take a little bit more work, but on this one, it was all based on code that I gave it from CodePen in this example. So now we're going to cover what does it look like when I use CSS to define the design system. So let me pull up another example here. This guy over here. So this dashboard, it only has 2 prompts in this project. The first prompt was create a CRM dashboard. So if I go back in history and I go to the very first prompt, this is what Lovable initially gave me, right? Which again, if you're new to AI tools or you're just creating something in a rush, this may be good enough. This yellow is killing me, but for most people, they would look at this and say like, you know what? This is functional. I can move forward and just continue building. But at some point, you will think like, okay, what if I could take this a little bit further and start really crafting the design side of things? Most people, what they would do is start prompting individually and maybe give this less border radius, change the color. But you may be looking at 20 to 30 prompts before you're somewhat more satisfied with the final output. So what I did with this example is I pulled up this. Let me see if it's this one. Yep. I went on CodePen. So for those of you unfamiliar with CodePen, it's codepen.io. And CodePen it's an open source repository. It's MIT licensed. So you can go in and use these projects however you want. You can go in and, for example, let me see if I can find a cool one here. I spent so many hours and days on this website. It's truly magical. It's always being updated. There's some really awesome designers on here. But for this example, what I'm doing is, for example, when you open up a CodePen project, it gives you HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So going back to the dashboard that we were looking at earlier, so I found this dashboard and I thought like, you know what? I love this like glass morphism, liquid glass style, the see-through. I love the background, but there's a lot of stuff on here that I don't need, right? For the project that we were looking at. So what I did was I went over here and I copied the entire CSS. So I just went over here, highlighted this entire thing, or even more easily, I can just do select all. And I just did copy. I did not copy the HTML or the JavaScript down here. I only did purely the CSS. And then when I jump over to my Lovable project, I told Lovable, okay, you go back to this example here. So going again to my first prompt, I simply told it, create a CRM dashboard. And then for the second prompt, what I did was I told Lovable, use the CSS below as the design system for the project. Make sure we use this code as the only reference for components, tokens, and theme. Make sure to not use ShadCN design system. Here's the code. And I just copy and pasted the entire CSS that we were looking at earlier. It's all in here. I hit enter and that was it. So in 2 prompts, I was able to get this dashboard that I'm already happy with. I can look at this and say like, okay, this already would stand out from other CRM dashboards out there. So now if I were to continue working on this, I would solely focus on the technical side of things. I would focus on, integrating authentication, creating the other routes and pages, or any APIs I want to work on, but I do not have to overthink design at all at this point. So this is what, prompting with CSS would look like. Another, fun example here is this. So Lovable recently came out with a Shopify integration, right? And, I was born in 1989. So, anything that has to do with like retro video games, it gives me like this sense of nostalgia. So I thought to myself, like, okay, wouldn't it be cool to have like a Shopify site? And of course, this isn't live. Otherwise, Nintendo would sue the living life out of me. But, I thought as a cool example, I went on CodePen and I took examples of CSS and I used it across this project. So for example, things like this little hover animation here, if you go on CodePen and look up Nintendo, or in this case, I looked up Zelda, you know, all these elements are from CodePen. Now, something else I did, and if you go to the very first prompt, this is where the other type of prompting would come into play, or design system usage, is with NPM packages. So I told Lovable, install NPM. I actually said it was twice, but all you can say is install NPM Nest CSS. So Nest CSS is a design system that is based on this retro look. So it already gave me everything here. And this is a fully functional Shopify site. I can add to cart. And then if I go up here, I can look at the cart. I can remove items. And then when I click shop checkout, it takes me to this checkout page here. So what is an NPM design system or a NPM install? So if you go to npmjs.com, this is a way of packaging design systems and pretty much using it in your project. So for example, if I go here and I type in augmented UI, which is one of the examples I'll be showing you. So augmented UI is a design system that has almost like a futuristic, almost cyberpunk look to it. And what that looks like is this one over here. So in this case, this entire landing page was created with mostly one prompt. There was some back and forth that I did to like add additional sections, but the entire look and feel was defined from the very first prompt here. And that prompt was install npm augmented UI, then include the node module. So some npm packages will give you additional instructions, and you can find that when you go to the npm package itself. So for example, if I look up augmented-UI, so it's this one here. And when I go to its homepage, there's two ways you can do this. Is some of these design systems will have their own website where it defines how to use the entire design system. Before we had AI, usually you would implement this by copy pasting different CSS and HTML on the design system website, and then you would be able to use it in your project. But now with all these tools that we have now, you can simply use one prompt and it gives you the entire thing all ready to go. So all it takes is usually one or two prompts and you're pretty much there. Another, something else I want to share with you guys, there are other libraries you could reference. One of them being, for example, GitHub, which most of us know already. If you go on GitHub and you type design system, there's a ton of open source design systems. A lot of them from, enterprise level companies that are openly sharing their design systems. Or Microsoft here. So Microsoft has Fluent UI as a design system that anyone can go in and use on their own projects. And even though on GitHub it gives you all these files, the only thing you have to know is this npm package install that they give you down here. So certain design systems will give you different instructions, but if you follow these instructions, you'll be able to implement the design system. Because we're running short on time, we'll be covering this a lot more on a webinar that we have coming up later in the month. But another tool that I like to use is, for example, this was one that I personally created, and it's called Instalanding. It's instalanding.ai. And what you do here is it gives you components. So for example, this component here is already something that you can simply copy paste from the website. But what's really cool is if you go on Lovable, for example, and you copy paste this component, so for example here, what it is I copied this initial component, and then I told Lovable to create the rest of the landing page. I told it, okay, use this component as your design system and create the about section, a feature section, and it took very little effort to get to this level of results. But yeah, that covers at least a basic overview of the different types of design system prompting.
Yeah, awesome, Ray. Always great to see like the new examples you come up with, because it really is limitless. Like how many different designs you can create. I think it's like how you find them and then how you implement them is like really the key. We'll stay on for a little bit if people have questions.
I got a question. My name is Shafir. Can you explain me about what's the relevance on the design token?
Yes, Shafir, that's a really good question. So design tokens essentially are going to define the CSS of your project. So when we're looking at, let me pull up one of my examples here. Essentially, when you're defining design tokens, if you want to look, a little bit closer on the technical side, if you go to code and then you go to index CSS on your Lovable project, and again, like Adam mentioned earlier, this is applicable with V0, Bold, Replit. So right now, when I define the design system, it defined all colors, gradients, fonts that should be defined here. So these are our design tokens. Like, for example, when we're looking at the background, it's giving me these attributes, and this is what's going to define every single background on the body of the project, on the cards. For example, every single card will have certain border radius. When gradients are being used, it's already very well defined in the CSS file. So this is where tokens come into play. Like what we're looking at here is CSS, but it's essentially the design tokens that we're using on the project. So if at any point I changed my mind and I thought, you know what, I'm going to change the gradient colors that we're using, I can either prompt it with Lovable and tell it, hey, on our design system, let's redefine our gradient usage so that it uses, these three colors. Or I could go into the CSS file, change it here, save, and then boom, the design system now has that new gradient input in terms of tokens. So hopefully, did that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, that answers my. So basically, this is basically that token, what you give to LLM to respond to you with a response. Like this is how basically you are telling LLM this is the CSS design pattern with the tokens, what LLM can understand. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, that's right on point.
Francesca, did you still have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Adam. Super helpful. Thank you, everyone. This webinar has been really great. Question regarding design systems. So the startup that I'm essentially building, there's going to be a login, and then I want to ensure that the design system is cohesive upper funnel and then also lower funnel. In your example, I noticed like the dashboard was a little bit different. So when I'm looking at these databases, should I look for a design system that already has, like, let's say, a dashboard component in it? Or do you think just by having a design system laid out, it will automatically create one with the various components that I want?
Excellent question. So design systems, when they were initially created, it was for usage on products. So that would be dashboards mostly, right? And when you're looking at design systems, when they're defining border radius, cards, hover animations, it's mostly thinking of dashboards and product. But, once we started using design systems and landing pages, we realized that it could be used both for what we would call the marketing site, which is the landing page. And once the user logs in and they're looking at the product, the design system does carry over. So yes, I would say that when you're defining your design system, you should think of it in a way where, okay, if I'm looking at a dashboard and it's for, let's say, a financial dashboard, right? You want to think ahead and say, like, okay, what are we going to use for graphs? What are we going to use for, the authentication modules? And that's going to definitely help expedite things. But yes, design systems are definitely made. Actually, the example I brought up earlier for Microsoft, that's a design system for their products. They're not thinking so much of landing pages. They're thinking more so along the lines of, like, what is our product going to look like?
Exactly. That's exactly how I'm thinking of it too. So it's like zoom into the lower funnel, what that experience is going to be, and then apply those elements to upper funnel. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. Thank you.
I think it also depends. I mean, Kat, maybe you can talk about like your experience, like putting neobrutalism throughout the user flow. But if you use something more general, I think it's easier to apply. Whereas if you take specific, CSS or maybe in NPM where they have very defined components, maybe you'll need to do some prompting to kind of say, oh, use this, but like I want to change it in this way.
Yeah, the only other thing, I think that's spot on. The only other thing I would say from my experience is I sort of like trust in the design system and let it do its thing. And then if I don't like what they've built, then I'll bring in more specific either screenshots or CSS to like redefine components.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
We got a couple questions in the chat. See those, Ray?
Yeah, so we have from Matt, is design system assignment fully independent from framework? In other words, could I say, give me neobrutalism as a design system, but only express tokens and tailwind CSS structure? Yes, so if you are, design systems, you can use it in different frameworks. So for example, I've been using Next.js more so than, for example, regular React Byte lately. And design systems do carry over from either vanilla JavaScript frameworks to higher level like Next.js or React Byte. In theory, even with something like Angular, you could use design systems. So yes, they are applicable throughout design frameworks.
Yeah, I was also check like if you're taking designs or from some kind of like npm install, like sometimes also say this is meant for certain languages, which you can still modify, but it's like it'll be a little bit harder.
And then Ron has a really good question here. Ray, what link do you like to use for finding design systems on CodePen? So what I usually do, Ron, is when I go on CodePen, I use their search bar and I start, for example, if you look up Apple, it'll pull up Liquid Glass, because what's cool about CodePen is everyone who's uploading their repository of their project usually will tag it with Liquid Glass and Apple, right? So there's almost like a search engine of sorts within CodePen. So if you look up Liquid Glass, I've even gone as far as like typing in, let's say, the word experimental, right? And it'll pull up all these different projects that have like more out there designs. You could look up neobrutalism. There's skeuomorphism, which is another cool one. But yeah, I would say when you're on CodePen, definitely leverage their search engine.
Yeah, I've like, I think just also browsing it and like finding people that you like and following them and just kind of keeping up every once in a while on what are some of the new ones or what are the trending ones is I don't know. You just kind of got to put in the work and immerse yourself a little bit sometimes to be in touch with like what are new things or what are popular things.
So for example, Ron, this one here, I looked up neomorphic, which is another type of design system, and it gave me, this is a very, very low effort attempt at a landing page. I literally told it create a landing page, right, with no other context.
What was it, a few weeks ago? I taught a guest lecture course at Harvard Business School, and I was looking for a few things to add to kind of give a sense of what you could learn if you took like more fuller design system course. And so like I found something that had these kind of clouds that I wanted, and then I found this like cool flame on CodePen, right? It took a little bit of prompting to like get it right, but I mean these are all just taken from like CodePen and using the process that we go through in the full workshop.
My question is basically like if I'm going for iterative approach, how the tokens will take a, it will give that token information to LLM in each iterative approach, or it will persist and it have a kind of a memory kind of stuff to remember that if I'm changing each of the page elements or anything.
Yes. So when you're prompting with your LM, it's important to always define that you're making changes across the design system. So for example, if you, and hopefully this answers your question, but if let's say I defined a token system or a design system initially, and then I decide I'm going to go ahead and change it, you do have to reference the fact that this is a change on the design system and that this will be applicable now to all buttons, for example, so that it remembers. Otherwise, the context memory will be limited if you're not really like dialing in on what exactly is this change going to encompass.
Okay. So that's inversely, answered my question. So whatever you have given, so initially it will stay like you can do an iterative approach with the same design. It won't give the tokens to LLM at that point in time.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
you can also use, I mean, different tools at different sections in Lovable. It's called knowledge. So if you have something that you always want to make sure that the LLM references, you can always add it there as well. It's like cursor rules and cursor knowledge, like global knowledge and bolts, like all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then Linda also had a question. Linda, I'm not sure if you're still here. Looks like you're also from Sweden, so that's pretty cool. We got another. So it says, could you please repeat the last design system you mentioned, the one that seemed to have some kind of collaboration with Lovable? So I believe that was the example where I pulled up Shopify. So Shopify itself is it's an e-commerce platform. But within that Lovable and Shopify example, I used a design system called NES, so NES.CSS, and that's what gave it that like retro look to it. And then we have Francesca also has a question. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. So in your examples, you've essentially did the design system in the first prompt. I've learned that with LLM models, it's better to like break up prompting and do it in chunks. Would the next logical step be the UX and like the other components, like the other aspects of your, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So start first with UI and then move forward from there.
Yeah. You definitely want to start with your, and I mean, one of my examples was
like it's like structure, like scaffolding, we kind of call it, right? Like back end and front end, like frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
Define how it's gonna like what it's gonna use in order to continue to build it out.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out is like the steps in the sequence. Like when do I first prompt back end or front end, or like, yeah, that's kind of
Kat, what did you do?
Puzzle in my head. Yeah.
So I don't know how you're doing it, Francesca, but I did the PRD, which is like, using the user flow, I think is really important to think through, and like the vision for your product. And then, so to the scaffolding point, right? Like, where are we going? What is the design system that's going to help us get there? And then like, as I got through the product roadmap that I have, like, then we iterate on things. I don't know if that's helpful.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you again, Ray and Kat, for sharing your advice and your experience. And yeah, please fill out the survey, sign up for the full workshop. And if you're in the Seattle area, we have other events going on in the next couple of weeks as well.